Okay, welcome to another GrafX2 tutorial. Today I kind of want to do some palette creation, so let's get into that. This is your palette button here. You can also hit the P key to get into it, when the window's selected, of course. So we'll hit P, and you can see that this is a preloaded palette that comes off of the current theme you're using for your buttons and interfaces and all that stuff. So basically what I want to do is I want to begin by kind of clearing this out. I'm going to leave 4 colors here, and you'll see why in a minute. I'm going to make this color black. Again, these are sliders for red, green, and blue. And I'm going to make this color black too. And now I'm going to hold the left mouse button down, and I'm going to drag from one black to the next. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say spread. Now we have a hideous pink interface at the moment. If yours is all black or a different color, that's fine. You just need to know to hit the backspace key, and that gives you back your graphical user interface color. So now everything's visible because GrafX2 uses this palette of 255 colors to also draw its menus and stuff. So you need to hit backspace whenever you load a palette or whenever you make your own palette, because you want to have the menu colors in here. So these should all be black. If we look around, they're all zeroed out. And that's kind of like the way I like to start. I'm going to leave this index color 0. I'm going to leave that black. I just prefer that as my transparent. So we'll go to color number 1 here, and we'll begin mixing. Now I think red, green, and blue mode is fine for, of course, display. That's how our pixels work. But if we left click this, we get a more natural mode. It's hue, saturation, and luminescence. Basically, you can think of the hue as the color of the color, so red, green, blue. The saturation is how much pigment is in that color, and then luminescence, or maybe it's luminosity, one of the two, is going to be how bright that is. So let's begin by at least raising some luminescence so we can see it. Now I'm going to raise the saturation and put some actual color in what we're mixing, and then you can see as I slide along the hue, now we see our different colors emerge. So since red is 0, and it's also consequently 255, you can think of it as wrapping around, we're going to start mixing some red. Some people may not like a pure red, so they may start bending it, towards, maybe this is going to bend it towards orange. But we could start with that. Now, for a dark color, we don't want it so luminescent, so we're going to bring that down. We're going to establish our base tone here. That almost looks brown to me, so I'm going to raise saturation a little bit. I like about 75% for some of my stuff. And you can see here that our red color is, I think that's acceptable for now. Maybe a little bit brighter. No, it's too bright. Okay, so I'm going to always work off the former color, so I'm always working off the color I was just working on, making a slight modification each time. I'll copy the color here. You can see it's selected. I'll hit copy, and look at the cursor change, and when I click here, it's going to paste it into wherever I clicked. So let's begin kind of bending the luminescence up a little bit. I don't think I'm going to bend hue too much, but let's begin getting that second one in. And you have to kind of judge, is that enough of a step, or do I need to add a little bit more? That might be a bit much. Yeah, that's good there. Okay, so I'll copy this and I'll paste it there. Sometimes these sliders will move a little bit in copying. It won't be exactly the same number, but it'll be close. And the reason is because when you're converting from different color models, it's not a perfect it's not a mathematically perfect process. There is some error that accumulates, so just be aware of that when you're copying. We could bend it maybe a little bit towards orange. I'm going to raise luminescence now, make it a little bit, and of course you can drag down here too, just kind of getting it where I want to go. Okay, I don't know, I might take saturation down just a touch, and you have to use your eyes. I mean, some colors will look more saturated or less saturated, or more luminescent or less, depending on the hue you're using. A really good example. Let me finish this first, then I'll go back to it. So I'll copy that and I'll paste that there. I'm going to raise the luminescence a little bit because we're headed towards white until I think that's about right. Saturation, do I need a little less, or is that okay? That's pretty good. Okay, I'm gonna do one more bright color, and I'm gonna raise luminescence, and I think that's about right. Okay, so what I was saying earlier is some colors will look more or less luminescent than others. So, for example, let's copy this red here, and I'm gonna paste it somewhere where it won't be in the way, and I'll paste it there. So I want to have something to compete with, so we'll test it against this. Now, just changing the hue, if I go to purple, oh, that was weird. Look how much darker the purple looks. But it's the same luminescence. See, that's why you need to use your eye. Don't just trust the computer to get the luminescence consistent, because our displays and our eyes work differently. So if I take that nasty, well, it's not a nasty purple, but let's take that dark bluish purple, and now let's shift that hue towards, something like even that bright, well, it's not bright, but that dark yellow. You can see that all three of these look to have a different amount of luminescence, but they're all mathematically the same. So remember to continue and use your eyes for mixing colors. Don't just assume, just because they all have the same luminescence, that they're all, visually and perceptually the same. They're not. I'm going to spread this black from here to here and get rid of those. Let's test this. Let's see how smooth this looks. This gives you kind of an idea, but let's see how smooth it looks with a sphere. That's a good test case. So I'm going to right click this arrow just so I get my black color in here. I'm going to select one of these to draw with just so I'll have something visible. I'm going to right click the gradient menu, and I'm going to say use this gradient to draw our sphere. I'm going to left click from there to there. I'm going to up the mix a little bit so we have something nice and dithered. And then I'm going to click the gradient sphere option. Now I'm going to draw out a sphere here, and this gives us kind of an idea of how this actually looks as a material. And looking at this, I think that this tone is a little bit too similar, and I think the darker needs to be a little darker. So if we hit P or click the gradient button, either way, you can change these in real time. Remember, this is index color, so these colors are mapped to these numbers, not necessarily the color they are. So what I want to do is I want to darken this a little bit, because you can see it's not very visible, or it's not very 3D-ish. It looks a little flat. So let's darken. There, that looks good. Let's see. This tone I think could be a little bit brighter. Just luminescence on that, and now we have more of a good curve on that. This could be a little bit darker, I think, so we'll bend the luminescence down a little bit. There we go. And now you can see we have a real nice curve there. You could also have the computer attempt to interpolate between one color and another, but you'll get some different effects than what the human eye does. So let's copy first the base one, and we'll paste it there. We'll select that one, we'll copy, and we'll paste it there. Now let's take a look and see what the computer's version looks like by dragging from here to here and saying spread from this color to this color. You can see it's quite a bit different. Mine got a little bit more red in the middle, but the computer goes right from the burgundy to that pinky flesh tone. Let's see what theirs looks like on the sphere. So what I'm going to do is I'll select a bright color just so we can see what it's drawing, and I'll right click the gradient selection, and we'll say draw from here to here. Remember, make sure your mix is smooth so we get a nice transition. And let's put it right next to mine, and we'll see how the computer's looks. So, yeah, it looks valid. It's just a different transition. So that's kind of the difference between the computer and you. You can always have the computer generate a perfect linear effect and then tweak a little bit too. Yeah. I guess really, if you wanted to, you could start with a sphere like that, and then you could go into the gradients, and you could, well, I guess I already showed changing in real time, but if you wanted to do some weird color transition, that's possible too. So what if we want to go from this burgundy to, let's say, a real pink color like that? So that looks pretty harsh, but the computer can smooth that out if we spread it. And you see we get a new transition. That's all well and fine, but it comes down to once you've put all this work into your palette, how do you save your palette? Well, if you go to the Save menu and you go to well, you don't have to go to Desktop. You can put these wherever you want. I'm just going to put it on my desktop, throw it away later after this video. Make sure your format is in, should be Palette. Where's PAL? There we go. And we'll say testpal.pal, actually. Oops. All right, we'll save that. And you can see I made one prior. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to load somebody else's palette, and then I'll reload mine just to show how it works. So I have Dawnbringer's toolbox on here, and he has some palette options here under preset. Of course, he has all kinds in here too, but I'm going to just totally go right over my own palette, and I'll hit OK. And you can see the computer's remapped it to his palette. Of course, it took out the GUI color, so when I hit backspace we get those back. But now let's load my palette, and it should restore it. So if we go to Desktop, here we go. Let's load that. Discard changes, yes. And now we're back to my palette. And I think, yeah, okay, so we got the last four still. So that's how you can kind of save and load your own palettes, and how you can view kind of a 3D transition when you're working on them. Of course, there's a lot of options. These are placement options, or these are placement options here. These, I believe, well, I haven't looked too much into those, but just remember that you can hit the F1 key over your palette, or F1 key. Let me get to the F1. Let me get back into the palette and hit F1, and then you have all this information on all the options of the palette. There's quite a bit of options. I just mostly wanted to highlight the spread stuff. One other thing you can do is if you can copy chunks too. So we'll paste this here. Let's say we want the grayscale version of this. You can hit gray and you get the grayscale version of it. I'm not sure what algorithm it uses for grayscale, but it's a good option too if you want to make something a grayscale. Let's say you have, I'm going to make something ugly here real quick. Where's my blue? A little more saturation. We'll do something like this. Let's make it a red one or something. That'll work. Yeah. More saturation, less luminescence. Okay, so let's say you have this and you want to invert these. I guess they call it negation. I don't know. Or negative, probably what they mean. But you can have the negative of that color too. I don't know when that would be useful, but it's always something you can consider. And it's just an option that you can mess around with too. So I think that's it for today, and I think I've gone on for long enough. So I hope everybody has a good day and keep making art.